You think you made your choices, that the life you're living, the job, the partner, the city, the lifestyle, was the product of your own free will, that you weighed your options, followed your passion, listened to your gut, and chose what felt right. But what if I told you that most of the choices you think you made were already made for you? Long before you even knew what choosing really meant, someone had already laid the tracks. Your parents, with the best of intentions, nudged you toward what was safe, respectable, or practical. Teachers praised your performance only when it aligned with the system. Friends shaped your tastes. Culture shaped your dreams. And the internet, it handed you 1,000 images of what success should look like, then quietly dared you to measure up. You believe you like your field of work. But let's be honest, did you choose it because you loved it? Or because it had stability? Because it had prestige? Because you were told it was a smart choice? You believe you fell in love with someone who's right for you. But how much of that is compatibility? And how much is image? Social class, education level, what they do for a living, how they look on Instagram? You think you're living your life. But if you peel back the layers, you'll find it's not a life you created. It's a life you inherited. A composite of societal expectations, subconscious programming, and unexamined fears. A life designed to be accepted, applauded, and, most dangerously, understood by others. You were never taught to ask, "What do I want?" You were taught to ask, "What will they think of me if I want this?" That's the trap. Modern society is obsessed with the illusion of choice. You're surrounded by endless options. Career paths, partners, lifestyles, diets, belief systems. But options aren't the same as freedom. You can't truly choose if your values, your desires, and your definitions of success were programmed into you before you even learned how to question. You inherited the blueprint. All you did was color inside the lines, and society loves that. Because a person who believes they are free is far easier to manage than one who knows they are not. We rarely stop to ask, who defined this version of a good life? Why do I crave what I crave? Who benefits when I stay on this path? Why do I feel so hollow even when I'm doing everything right? Søren Kierkegaard warned us about this over 150 years ago. He said that the greatest danger is not in choosing the wrong life, but in never choosing at all. In simply becoming what others expect, what tradition demands, what society rewards. He called it despair, not the loud kind, but the silent kind. The kind that comes from being so thoroughly shaped by the world around you that you forget you ever had the power to shape yourself. He wrote, "The most common form of despair is not being who you are." And that's the haunting truth. You can follow every rule, achieve every milestone, check every box, and still lose yourself entirely. Because if you never truly chose, then none of it ever truly belonged to you. Stay with me, because the deeper we go, the more you'll see that this isn't just about bad decisions. It's about a system designed to make you never question the ones you were trained to make. And until you question it, until you choose again, you will remain a stranger to your own life. Here's where it gets even more unsettling. The real mistake wasn't the career you chose, or the relationship you stayed in, or the version of success you chased. The real mistake was who made those choices in the first place. Because what if that person wasn't actually you? What if the self you trusted, the one who planned your goals, weighed your decisions, and defined what a good life should look like, wasn't your true self at all, but a role you learned to play? This is what Kierkegaard meant when he wrote, "The self is the relation that relates to itself." It sounds strange at first, but he wasn't talking about some abstract idea. He was pointing to something deeply real and painfully familiar. You see, there are two versions of you. There's the you that was shaped by the world, crafted by expectations, fear, praise, trauma, validation. This is the version of you that wears the right clothes, says the right things, believes the acceptable ideas. This self knows how to be liked. It knows how to fit in. It knows how to perform. And then there's the you that watches all of this unfold from behind the curtain. The silent witness, the one who wonders late at night, is this really me? Kierkegaard's warning wasn't about the wrong career or the wrong lover. His warning was this: you can spend your whole life making smart, rational, responsible decisions and still end up utterly lost. Because if the self making those decisions is false, then every step you take, even towards success, leads you further away from who you really are. That's the trap. In today's world, we're constantly told to be ourselves, be authentic, be real. But no one ever asks, which self are you being? Because here's the painful truth. Most people's idea of being myself is just a slightly customized version of what their environment told them was acceptable. It's not freedom, it's branding. You're not choosing your identity. You're selecting it from a menu curated by your culture. You wear your style, follow your dreams, post your thoughts. But all of it was assembled quietly, carefully, by outside influences. You're playing a part that you didn't even realize was written for you. And the scariest part is, you've been playing it for so long, you started to believe it was you. That's why Kierkegaard called it despair, but not the dramatic kind. Not tears and breakdowns. He spoke of a quieter, more insidious despair. The despair of not knowing you've lost yourself. The despair of living a life that looks right from the outside, but feels increasingly hollow within. He said, the worst form of despair is to be unaware that one is in despair. In other words, to live a lie and call it truth. To wear a mask and call it your face. To lose yourself and never even notice. And this is where most people stay, trapped in a life built by a self they never chose, chasing goals that were never theirs, suffering silently while pretending they're fine. But let me ask you something. Have you ever had a moment, maybe brief, maybe buried, where something didn't feel quite right? Where the life you were living felt a little too scripted? Where the voice in your head said, this isn't really me, and then went silent again? That's not confusion. That's the beginning of awakening. Because once you recognize that the self you've built might not be the self you truly are, you've taken the first step. And from here, everything can change. But only if you're willing to confront the one question society never wants you to ask. Who am I beneath the performance? And that's where we're heading next. Because uncovering that truth is the only way to design a life that's truly yours. On paper, your life might look perfect. You have a decent job, a stable relationship, a respectable routine, maybe even a 5-year plan. From the outside, it all checks out. It looks logical, clean, functional, structured. But inside, something feels off. You go to work each day and you do your tasks well. You meet deadlines, you attend meetings, you perform. But deep down, you don't feel connected to any of it. You can't quite answer the question, why am I doing this? Not in the sense of productivity, but in the sense of meaning. You just do it because, well, that's what you're supposed to do. Your relationship looks solid. There's no major conflict, no betrayal, no drama. But do you feel free to be fully yourself in it? Or are you subtly editing your emotions, managing your truth, trimming the parts of you that don't fit the version of who you're expected to be? You've built a good image. You're well-spoken, polished, controlled. People see you as successful, capable, even admirable. But if you're honest, does keeping up that image exhaust you? Do you ever feel like you're performing your own life? You've set clear goals. You've visualized the future. But every step forward feels a little hollow, like you're chasing something that once made sense but now rings empty. The more progress you make, the less alive you feel. This is the paradox. Your life is logically sound, but spiritually vacant. You've built a structure that functions, but doesn't breathe, a schedule that moves but doesn't nourish, a direction that points forward but not inward. And Kierkegaard saw this long before we did. He called it aesthetic despair. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's not a breakdown. It's a quiet ache, a subtle disconnection that follows you from room to room. You smile through it, you keep going. But somewhere beneath the surface, you're haunted by a question you can't quite name. Aesthetic despair is the state of living for appearances, for sensation, for pleasure, for social coherence, while the soul is left untended, unanchored, and unknown. And here's the trick. Aesthetic despair feels fine. It lets you enjoy life's surface pleasures, entertainment, beauty, success, attention. It numbs you just enough to keep going, but never deep enough to feel truly fulfilled. You're not miserable, but you're not truly alive either. You've traded rootedness for performance, depth for movement, meaning for momentum. Kierkegaard warned that this kind of living is seductive because it offers the illusion of completeness. But beneath it is a soul that is slowly starving, disconnected from purpose, unsure of its origin, unaware of its own despair. This is why the anxiety doesn't go away, why there's always a hum of restlessness beneath the accomplishments, why you find yourself asking, "Is this it?" even when everything looks right. Because you're not just looking for answers, you're looking for roots, for something real. Something that doesn't collapse when the performance ends and the lights go out. And until you confront that emptiness, not with distraction but with presence, you will continue building a beautiful cage around a forgotten self. This isn't a failure of logic, it's a failure of spirit, and the only way out is not more planning, but more listening. Because your life doesn't just need direction, it needs depth. And that's what we're going to face next. Not the outer structure of your life, but the silent, urgent question echoing beneath it. Why am I really here? You've built a life that makes sense. You've followed the rules, checked the boxes, stayed productive, stayed moving. But underneath all the structure, all the progress, something still feels wrong. You don't feel grounded. You don't feel whole. You feel like you're running, always running, but you're not sure where to or why. Here's the truth. You're not running toward a life. You're running away from something. And that something is anxiety, but not just the surface kind. Deadlines, bills, awkward conversations. What we're talking about is existential anxiety, the kind that Kierkegaard called the dizziness of freedom. He saw it as a fundamental part of the human condition, a moment when we become aware that we are truly free, free to choose, free to shape our lives, free to define who we are. But with that freedom comes a terrifying realization. There is no script, no guaranteed right path, no authority that can tell you with certainty what your life is supposed to mean. That's the real anxiety, the weight of possibility, the vastness of what if. The silence that follows the question, what do I do with this one wild life? And so most people do what humans have always done when faced with fear. They run from it. They bury the anxiety beneath optimization. They work harder, love smarter, plan better, stay productive, stay moving, stay distracted. They treat anxiety like a flaw to be corrected, a glitch in the system. But in doing so, they miss the deeper message, the invitation hiding inside the fear. Kierkegaard believed that anxiety wasn't something to be avoided, but something to be faced. It is, paradoxically, a signal of growth, a sign that you're standing on the edge of real change, real freedom. But the modern world teaches the opposite. It tells you that stillness is dangerous, that if you're not productive, you're wasting time, that if you're anxious, you must be doing something wrong. So you push harder, move faster, keep going. You become obsessed with improvement, with control, with staying one step ahead of your own fear. And without realizing it, you fall into the most common trap of all, You live your life not to find meaning, but to avoid discomfort. You turn away from the questions that matter. You replace introspection with strategy, soul with systems. You avoid the anxiety of asking why by drowning in endless how. And slowly, silently, you lose your way. You don't even notice it happening because the life you're living looks impressive. It feels busy. It seems fine. But deep down, you sense the truth. You're not living with purpose. You're just avoiding pain. You've become so afraid of standing still that you keep running, faster, harder, longer, through a maze you didn't even build, hoping that if you just move fast enough, the questions won't catch up to you, but they always do. Because true anxiety doesn't live in the external world. It lives in the gap between who you are and who you pretend to be, between the life you're living and the one you were meant to live. And the more you run from that gap, the wider it grows. So maybe the goal isn't to escape anxiety, but to listen to it, to let it crack the surface, to let it lead you back to something real. Because as Kierkegaard understood, the fear of freedom is real, but so is the gift it offers. And only when you stop running can you begin to remember who you were before the world taught you who to be. That's where we're heading next, into the silence you've been avoiding, because inside that silence is the beginning of something real. Let's pause for a moment. No more theory, no more abstraction, just you and the life you're living. And let me ask you something directly. Why do you feel empty, even after achieving what you worked so hard for? Why is it that from the outside, everything seems fine, but inside, something quietly tells you it isn't? Why do you have to think so hard, so uncomfortably long, just to answer one simple question? What do I truly want? Sit with those questions, not as ideas, but as mirrors, because these aren't signs of failure. They're symptoms of something deeper, something existential, a quiet distress that doesn't scream but lingers, a restlessness that logic can't explain and success can't silence. You're not broken, but you may be lost, and not in the dramatic falling apart kind of way. No, this is more subtle, more common, and far more dangerous, because it feels like you're functioning. You get up, you do the job, you play the role, you smile when you're supposed to, you laugh at the right moments, but something is missing, and deep down, you know it. This is what Kierkegaard pointed to when he wrote about the sickness of the self. Not physical sickness, but spiritual disorientation, the kind of sickness where the pain isn't I'm suffering, but I don't know who I am. It's not that you failed. It's that you're not even sure what version of yourself you were trying to succeed as. You've been so busy becoming what the world wanted, so good at fitting into roles, that the original self, the raw, wild, unfiltered self, was left behind long ago. And now, the roles are wearing thin. Because the truth is, no amount of success will ever satisfy a self you don't recognize. No relationship will feel safe when you're hiding behind a mask. No amount of comfort will ever bring peace when your life is built on someone else's blueprint. This is existential pain. It doesn't cry, it doesn't beg, it doesn't collapse, it just lingers. It shows up in the silence between your to-do lists, in the way your smile fades too fast, in the ache behind your eyes when you're alone. In that quiet, recurring thought you never say out loud, something's not right, I don't feel like myself. That voice, that discomfort, that's not weakness, that's truth knocking. And the longer you ignore it, the more distant you become from yourself. Because this isn't about what job you have, or who you love, or what goals you chase. This is about who's doing the choosing. You can't design a meaningful life from a disconnected self. You can't be free if you've never asked who you are without the layers, the roles, the performance. So ask yourself, honestly, are you living or are you maintaining? Are you choosing or are you complying? Are you existing as a self or just fulfilling a script? Because until you face those questions, every win will feel strangely hollow. And no matter how much you do, it will never feel like you did it. This isn't a crisis. It's a crossroad. And the choice you make next might be the first real choice you've made in a long time. In the next chapter, we'll talk about that turning point, the moment where everything can begin again. Not with a new plan, but with a new sense of self. By now, maybe you're feeling it. That slow ache behind the rolls. That quiet realization that the life you've been living doesn't quite belong to you. And your first instinct might be to fix it, change jobs, end the relationship, move cities, start over. But Kierkegaard offers a warning here, one that's as relevant today as it was in the 1800s. The problem isn't the choices you made, it's the self who made them. And if that self remains unchanged, then no matter what you do, you'll end up in the same cycle again. Same ache, different scenery. The solution isn't to rearrange the pieces, it's to rebuild the one holding them. Kierkegaard believed that no one is born with a fully formed identity. You don't receive yourself, you must become yourself. And that process is not clean, it's not easy, it's not comfortable, because the only way to discover who you truly are is to walk straight through everything you've spent your life avoiding. You have to pass through the anxiety, the silence, the uncertainty. You have to face the despair, not as something to escape, but as something that strips away everything false, everything borrowed, everything performative. In his words, to be yourself is the greatest task of all and the greatest risk. Why a risk? Because becoming your true self means risking the loss of everything that isn't truly you. The image, the expectations, the comfort, the approval, the applause. It means letting parts of your old life die so that something more real can be born. This isn't about reinventing yourself as a project. This isn't self-help. This is self-confrontation, the raw, uncomfortable process of looking in the mirror and saying, "This is not who I want to be, and I don't fully know who I am yet, but I'm finally ready to find out." That's where the path begins, not in clarity, but in honesty. Not in control, but in surrender. Not in certainty, but in the courage to walk into the unknown, trusting that your soul has something deeper to offer than what the world demanded you become. Kierkegaard didn't promise ease, he promised meaning, and he believed meaning comes only when you stop chasing the life you were told to live and begin creating one from your own center. So don't rush to fix your life. Let it fall apart if it needs to. Let the masks crack. Let the noise fade. Let the old answers die. Because beneath all of it, beneath the persona, the pressure, the perfection, is a quieter truth. You are not lost. You are not broken. You are just not done becoming yet. And the moment you accept that is the moment your real life begins. So where do you go from here? What happens after the masks start falling? After the noise fades? After you admit that the life you've been living wasn't fully yours? You don't need to blow everything up. You don't need to disappear into the mountains or start from zero in some grand, dramatic way. But you do need to pause, to slow down long enough to hear yourself again, not the self shaped by algorithms or expectations, but the quiet, raw self that lives beneath it all. And that requires something most people never give themselves permission to do, to not know who they are for a while, to live in the in-between, to step outside of the roles, outside of the labels, outside of the script, and simply be unnamed, undefined, unfinished. That's where the truth begins to emerge. The next step isn't about optimizing or upgrading. It's not about becoming a better version of the false self. It's about becoming real. That means cutting the noise, taking a break from the systems that are still trying to shape you. Social media, peer pressure, family expectations, even your own internalized voices that still whisper, "You should be more than this." This is the sacred space where you begin rebuilding from the inside out, not based on status, Not based on achievement, not based on what makes you look successful or smart or admired, but based on what makes you feel alive, honest, rooted, present. You don't need to redesign your entire life overnight. You just need to reclaim the right to design it yourself. Take it back from the scripts. Take it back from the noise. Take it back from the fear of disappointing others. Take it back from the machine that told you who to be before you ever had a chance to decide. Because here's the truth no one told you. You're not living wrong. You're just living programmed. You're not broken. You've just been running from the discomfort that comes with real freedom. And Kierkegaard's message is simple, but radical. There's no shortcut, no back door, no perfect plan. The only way out is through the fear, through the silence, through the pain of not knowing until something real finally takes root inside you. You must begin again, from nothing, from nowhere, not with a brand, not with a strategy, but with the quiet courage to say, this time, I'm not building a life to be admired. I'm building a life that is mine. That's what Kierkegaard meant when he said the greatest task and the greatest risk is simply to be yourself, not the self they want, not the self you've performed, the real one. And maybe for the first time in your life, that's exactly who you're ready to become.